Welcome, everybody, to this last lecture in the online lecture series Excursions at Home. It's my pleasure to welcome tonight distinguished architect and former colleague Paul Robbrecht. But before I'll introduce our speaker of tonight, allow me to say a few words on the series. I've done it every single occasion, but I think it still makes sense to do it one last time. Excursions at Home is a lecture series that we called into life at the start of this academic year when we suddenly realized to our own sadness, basically, that traveling this year for our students and us as teachers was not going to be a possibility due to the pandemic COVID-19. But we thought we could find a compromise that maybe could bring some solace in this quite intense period that we've been going through the past months. We thought if we can't travel literally, physically, maybe we can invite colleagues, friends, architects, artists that we admire, that we'd like to talk to bring us to places virtually, and invite them to take us to places that they'd like to share with us and talk about. Basically, the thing that we normally do with our own students when we travel, when we go on an excursion, to go and see architecture, examples of urban planning, to talk about it and to share our thoughts and ideas about these specific sites all over the planet, basically. Our BA students travel within Europe, and our master students take a yearly trip to more distant places, South and North America, Asia, even. I think it's still a bit up in the air whether it will happen, but if all goes well, and please, we pray they can go to Japan this year. And so we thought, let's invite one of many people we admire and to take us like the 18th century writer Xavier de Maistre, to travel from their own rooms, from wherever you are, from home or maybe someplace else, to travel with us to a distant place. And tonight it's our pleasure to welcome architect Paul Robbrecht, who founded with Hilde Daam, Robbrecht and Daam Architects. And I thought, what projects can I possibly enlist to from the vast oeuvre they have built over the past decades? And I thought maybe I'll just list the ones that I particularly admire, starting with the Documenta exhibition pavilions in 1992 in Kassel, the city archives in Antwerp, which I think is a stunning example of public infrastructure. The City Hall in Ghent, we just talked about it, a project that was highly debated, but I think now fully embraced by the people from Ghent. The Concert Hall in Bruges, an exemplary place to listen to music with, I have been told, of the best possible acoustic qualities in Europe and far abroad. And recently they have been awarded 3 projects that merit a mention here. Is Brusk, an exhibition hall, a Kunsthal in Bruges, a quite significant project for temporary exhibitions within the consortium of museums in Bruges, a large hospital in Hasselt, the Jesse Hospital, and also the Rubens House site in Antwerp that will be significantly refurbished by Robbrecht and Daam Architecten. And if you'd like to know more about the project, I can highly advise this wonderful book made by our own colleague Maarten van den Driessen, bringing together an anthology of projects and also essays about the work of Robbrecht and Daam, a beautifully designed book according to the Louis, which is, and I think Paul will definitely tell about us that in a few minutes, which is a kind of measurement rule they apply in their own office. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Paul to talk to us about a building by one of the architects he admires the most, Louis Kahn, the Parliament building in Bangladesh. Please, Paul, the floor is yours.
Good evening, dear audience, dear friends. Let's say my one word. Professor Walter Davids was involved in the Brusk project. He was one of our advisors thinking about what's going on in contemporary art. But may I say that it's for me wonderful opportunity to talk about a work of an architect that I truly admire, and since my students' times, it will be not an art historian story that I will tell about this architect and his final piece. I can say is a final major work, the Parliament building, the Sher Bangla Nagar in Dhaka. This was one of these wonderful moments that I was able to travel that far. But something what I share also with Wouter is that the love for contemporary art, and we had also lots of talks about this, and I must say that I will talk about my very early moments as a student and starting architect in relation to Louis Kahn, but then, and that was in the early 70s. But at the end of the 70s, there was like a second holistic moment that I felt from my horse, that when I was really in close contact with important artists, contemporary artists. Most of them unfortunately don't live anymore, but it was like the 70s, starting with this discovery of the personality of Louis Kahn, and at the end of the 70s, this very close relationship to art. And I think it must have been the period that we started talking. I don't know if it was in the 70s or 80s, Wouter, but yes, Louis Kahn, I have to say it's not an academic and neither an art historian thing that I want to tell. It will be, I want to talk about Louis Kahn and me. What brought something to me at a certain moment in my life, in my the moment that I discovered this architecture of Louis Kahn, and that was in the early 70s. I was still studying at St. Lucas in Ghent. Nobody talked about Louis Kahn. That didn't happen. Nobody talked about somebody else who I discovered practically on the same moment, Palladio. It's just, I found him myself on a certain moment. And with the first money I got when I started working in an office, and it was the office of the distinguished architect Marc Desauvage. With the first money I earned, I bought this book. That the book is from '75. It's published in Switzerland and in Artemis Verlag, Zurich, Munchen, 1975. It's really the first book with the money I earned myself that I bought. So, but of course, I discovered Louis Kahn earlier. Let's say there was an architecture d'aujourd'hui, and I think I lost it. It's one of the. I lost it, or somebody stole it. I don't have it anymore. This Louis Kahn architecture d'aujourd'hui. If somebody has it at home, please, still can send it back. But it was a beautiful architecture d'aujourd'hui because it was with yellow pages, an insert of yellow pages with this incredible drawings, and I will come back to the drawings of Louis Kahn, and it immediately took my attention. But what I have to tell more why, and I think at that moment not any one of my colleague students was interested. They found this monumental and thing. But what I want to try to explain is that I had a kind of reverse contact with architecture. The really first moment that architecture came into my life was the World Exhibition at Brussels in 1958. It's hard to explain what happened then. It was so amazing. I was 8 years old, and my father was also fascinated by this wonderful exhibition where things were brought together, where well, Le Corbusier and architects from Scandinavia, America, the Soviet Union, the two buildings were really confronted, the Soviet pavilion and the American pavilion. That all happened in a real Cold War, but still you can't believe how fascinating. So I had this enormous vision in '58 as a small boy, but everything, you know, even the steps leading to the Soviet pavilion, I see them. I see the wooden blocks in the Scandinavian pavilion, and of course there was the atomium. Maybe there's one little relation with this atomium and Louis Kahn, the atomium, which was an atomic molecule thing, and that was something that Louis Kahn was very interested in molecular structures and crystal structures, and it influenced his work. Maybe there's a little relation, but you know, Louis Kahn, this moment that I discovered Louis Kahn in let's say 72, 73, I don't remember, but he died in 74. It's the same year that my father died also. I was unsatisfied with my studies. I was very angry. I had studied 5 years of architecture. I finished also my studies in 74, and I felt unfulfilled, but I was a bit un homme révolté at that moment, but then I started to look at this work. Well, what I want to say, I first discovered modernity at the Expo in '58. Then I had a wonderful time in my high school time. I studied preparing studies for architecture, and I had strictly, we were strictly taught by a brother, a monk, in the Bauhaus education, color studies, letter writing, everything, and that was wonderful. So I had first modernity, and then I met this strange architect, strange buildings, looking like fortresses, looking like ruins, looking old, looking like they were there already 200 or even a few thousand years already. And it struck me because I myself was always interested in history as well. These are 2 pages of this book, the book of Louis Kahn I bought And you see that his building, his parliament building in Dhaka was still not finished. So, and he died, I think, in March of the, if I'm not wrong, in 74. And it took up till 82 that this building was finished. So he never saw his final building totally realized. That was how it was published in the book, with very little comments on it. Was at that time other buildings were more prominent, more well known, and this building was still. And the building is related to a very a very specific time. But I have to say also, I was in a period. I had this modernist background, but I felt when I finished my studies, I felt the need to do the ground tour, really the ground tour, like the 19th century architects did, artists did, really go to see the sources of Western culture, the Greek architecture. These are pictures that I took myself at that period. I traveled with Hilde at that time to see we did the whole classic tour. We did also the classic architecture, Roman architecture. But I will end with something in my talk about it. I felt really strongly the need to go back to the sources of Western architecture. I was really fond of it. And then that came together with an architect whose work is related to this basic architecture, and who wasn't ashamed to use pyramidical forms, but not in this terrible postmodern way, in a very authentic way. He used that. There's an immense difference between this and the postmodern boom in the 70s and Louis Kahn, which his profound relation with the history of architecture is much more fundamental and much more. Yeah, he found out something of this that was absolutely original. I want to show this image of this personality, also with Greek columns. And I like the guy, and I had the wonderful, 2 times wonderful opportunity to meet him personally, Aldo Rossi. And of course, also him, also these early buildings of Aldo Rossi was also something shocking. These repetitive buildings, this enormous long Galaratese apartment building, that all happened 74, 75, that we discovered, that I discovered this, that we discovered this, and that was in such a contrast with what I saw here and what the week it was. I think it was quite a weak period, not only in my studies, but I have not such a great idea of the 70s in architecture, actually. There happened something in the 60s, Marc Dessauvage, for instance. But when in the 70s, when I looked around at that moment, I couldn't find so much But that what happened, that was like concentrated thing that happened to me. But there was also this book of Konstantinos Dioxiadis, who analyzed in that book, and that had stayed in my architecture, I have to say, who analyzed the position of buildings, ancient Greek builders. You see here his analysis of the Acropolis, and how all these buildings are in a very particular relation to each other. Not like the Romans, straightforwards and in a grid thing, but in a kind of dynamic relation one to each other. He thought that these angles were angles that he shows here, from the Propylaeon looking to the Parthenon and looking to the Erechtheion and things like that, that they were all precisely proportional systems. That he, I don't believe this, it's more, but still these images had a very strong influence on me and on the idea of position, on the dynamics of something extremely static, but when you look at it on an angle, it's very forceful. Also, the way Greek temples and building were, how the way you could discover them. As I said, I made the classical tour, and that brought me also to Sicily. I saw the Greek temples, or to Paestum, and for instance, the temple in Segesta. You walk into the valley, you don't see any building, and then all of a sudden, the temple of Segesta is back to. The temple has seen you first before you see him, and that was so strong. These things I found out about classical Greek architecture, and I'm sure Louis Kahn, if I show this two iconic plans of Louis Kahn, the Dominican Mother House. Unfortunately, the building was never built. It was too expensive. But the whole study of this work is really incredible, and I think it's one of the most iconic plans that everybody knows of the 20th. I'm sure of the 20th century. This organisms. And also his reading of urban sites and things, and ancient architecture, but also urban sites, these organisms that are confronted to each other, and that, or in this case, surrounded by the cells of the nuns as a kind of regular thing. It's like, you could say, a nature morte. And the positioning of this, each of the building, the chapel, the refectorium, and these things, this strongly tensed relations with corners that hook in each other. Well, it's wonderful, of course. It's fascinating. It's something that's still, and each of these organisms has his own core, and I think honestly, it's still something, and I have to, if I show the plan of Bruges now, where a project where we are working on at the moment, the Bruges Museum of Fine Arts. It's a Kunsthalle, as Walter said. It's this building here, but related to this one, which is the Groeningen Museum, the Our Lady Church of Bruges, the Groothuizen, all these organisms that are confronted or related to each other. I think something of this discovery of this plan, not only that plan, but discovery of the idea of the building with its own logic, related, and sometimes in a very harsh way related to other buildings. If you look at this connection, it's really it's there where there will be well, I'm not going to explain this building, but it's also connected to Groeningen, and art pieces will brought that way over there, and people will walk over there, and there's a really functional, but bunk, two buildings also that we kept this old building, and it's yeah, but also the park. Well, there's something we cannot deny. There's something that stayed in us. Yeah. So we are back here in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, and I wanted to show this image. The building and the people and Bangladesh, and they are very far away from each other, and I have to say it's still like that. When I visit the building, was nobody. There was no people in this building. And the moment that I discovered this building, I told about the book in '75. The history of Bangladesh, the years before, has been one of the most harsh history moments in the history of the Indian subcontinent. There was the fight of the Bangladesh people for freedom under the leadership of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, that the East Bangladesh, the east parts separated from Pakistan. Imagine you have the Indian subcontinent in India, and you had one country, but very far away, some 3,000 kilometers away from each other. Pakistan, the west part and the east part, Bangladesh. And there has been for years a huge tension that the people of Dhaka and of Bangladesh felt not. They felt very bad. They felt that they were treated bad by the Rawalpindi, Pakistan, that forgot about West Pakistan, Bangladesh. But then that's the whole strange story about this building, is that the Pakistan government tried to do something for Bangladesh, and they wanted to put the parliament of both parts in Dhaka as a kind of, like, you know, that in Luxembourg, to give them something that, and that was already when in '62 that it started that Louis Kahn was involved in starting a project already in '62, and imagine these two countries separate, and still they continue to build this building. That's something quite specific, that they don't say this is the building from the rules before the government before. No, they said we continue to finish the building in a new country, Bangladesh. But it's a very harsh history, because you see the concert of Bangladesh, that was an incredible moment, a concert that was organized by George Harrison, that started with Ravi Shankar, who played for half an hour ragas, because at that moment, and that is one of the tragedies also of Bangladesh, is that it's a country where two rivers come together, but there are floods all the time. And at the moment when this concert for Bangladesh was organized, it was incredible, the images you saw of fugitives, of children in waters, drowned in water, or the fugitive go to India. India also worked together with Bangladesh to get it free. And then it was an independent country, and it was under the first president of Bangladesh was Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. He was actually a moderate politician, but you can't imagine that the Indian subcontinent, what happened politically. He was murdered in 1975. You know the story of Gandhi and Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi. But in Pakistan, you had Benazir Bhutto. All these politicians, they were. It looks like the countries of peace and love, but they are quite harsh in how to finish. We are now poisoning. That's the new thing. You know, it was also this concert was my last moment of relation with pop music. I have a very, very small relation with pop music, and there's the Beatles, and then it stops with me. And this guy, the other guy, Bob Dylan, and I don't know. I really ended my relation with pop music at that moment. And then in 2013, I had the opportunity to go with a group. It was the third time that I went to the Indian subcontinent. I was already there 2 times before, traveling with my family. But then I discovered there was a group of architects who wanted to do a really serious trip to India and finally to Pakistan, to Bangladesh. And I said, I have to do this. Also, I was already before in Chandigarh, and you don't get anything to see there. You're behind fences and you can see the buildings of Le Corbusier, but you can't enter. But this organization all organized it. But the trip started in Mumbai, but then went to Ahmedabad. And in Ahmedabad, you have, of course, the Louis Kahn building, the School of Management. And I just got the name. Look. The School of Management, and that was under the strong action of a family, an enormous important family for architecture in India. That is the Sarabhai family in Ahmedabad. Their own house was built by Le Corbusier, fantastic house, and Le Corbusier built it also in Ahmedabad, Mills owner building, this grid-like beautiful building of Le Corbusier, with also this School of Management. The trip went on then to Chandigarh, and then this time we entered all these buildings and also like this wonderful school of architecture that's which is not so well known. The image under there with the drawing tables, beautiful building. Actually, mostly done by his brother. And then, and that was India. I love this place, and I was already in early 2000 in India, and it's a bit coming home for me. The feeling I have over there, but this time it was intensely looking at architecture. And then we did, with a few people, the trip to Bangladesh. And we arrived there, and we learned to know about, there was an interesting architecture in, an architect, but more than that, an interesting already 50s and 60s architecture in Bangladesh. And this specifically this Muzarul Islam, and it's a fantastic architect. This is a school of arts, a beautiful building, beautiful and completely still working building. And it was him who pointed Louis Kahn to be the architect for the new parliament. Well, the new parliament, which was still Pakistan parliament, but this Muzarul Islam proposed Louis Kahn. There were other possible architects, European and American architects, but finally the choice was it was Louis Kahn who accepted the commission to build a new parliament building for, at that time, still a united Pakistan, but then it developed, the story I told. This is something, you can't talk about Bangladesh without talking about these immense rivers, the two rivers that come together in Pakistan, the Brahmaputra and Ganges. And actually the whole country of Bangladesh is one estuarium of these two immense rivers. We did a boat trip on this river, and on the banks of the river, you have all this brick bakeries with enormous chimneys. It's an amazing image. It's all along the river going from Dhaka northwards, you have this kind of images of this river, and the brickstone is something that plays a serious role as well in the project of Louis Kahn. What is amazing is to see the people in Bangladesh. Of course, it's one of the most poorest countries of the world, and you see really, really, really incredible poor children on the street, naked on the street, whatever. But on the other hand, you see a very, how could you say, like the boys on the boat, and a very dynamic and sometimes very cheerful population. On the other hand, it's a very great contrast, and people is the most amazing thing that you see. Even more impressed than I was even more impressed than the building of Kahn to see these people. But I'm sitting on the boat next. Oh no, it's on the quay next to a very important figure in Bangladesh architecture. beautiful man, beautiful person, architect, Siaf ul Haq. He is one of the guys who did a book on the parliament of very interesting book where he's also explaining the building history of the building and even the technical side of the building. Beautiful analysis of the building, Siaf. But it's an interesting guy. He did this building, the Arcadia Education Project, and this project won the Aga Khan Prize. Actually, the Parliament once also Khan won also the Aga Khan Prize. So to make it a little bit of complex, but one of this quite recently with this building, but because he did not do the building when I met him. It's a later project of him, but he did this building with extremely simple materials. It was built actually by, it's a school on a piece of land, and you see the river on the background, and also again these brick factories. It was on a piece of land that costed nearly nothing, that this school people could afford, and it's a building that regularly comes, a piece of land that regularly comes underwater at the flood, and he made it a building that could resist these floods. You can see, for instance, you see this oil cans, I think, and when the water comes up, the whole school can float. It's amazing. There are pictures if you look when it's completely elevated by the rising water. Wonderful thing, I would say. I haven't seen that because it was later, but to tell something about there's a strong what can I say, strong debate in Bangladesh about architecture. I met other architects and also female architects who do wonderful work in Pakistan. But this is something particular, and I had a few conversations. I'm still in contact with Siaf. Yeah, just to situate the building, it's of course over here, where this enormous open area, and which is actually a bit higher than everything. The whole complex of the Parliament, when one has to speak about a complex of many buildings that are related to each other, is that I try to explain a bit later. But you see that the river and the water is something which is really defining the total urban fabric of Dhaka, and amazing relation with this water, knowing that there are so many floods and things like that. And it's this citadel, I call it, sometimes is situated on a land that's just a little bit higher. So, and even from the air is quite impressive to see the plan and of Louis Kahn. One would say I'm looking at something from other ages, you would say, or Angkor Wat, or is it, or the, no, it's the parliament at the Angkor Wat, or the red, or the palace in Beijing. But no, it's a building that is really built in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. The parliament. And you already see something that in all the sketches, and that's so amazing to look at sketches of Louis Kahn, and also the way how he is developing his plan by by a very particular way of drawing. And I want to show some of these things, but always there has been this V-shaped form as a kind of general gesture, and something in the where the two arms of the V shape, something there, but it has been different things. It has not been always the parliament. It has also been the national courthouse. It slowly it developed that the parliament would be the central building. Now you have to know that it's of course an enormous effort for these people, and say, how can you do that? The most poorest country in the world that makes such a building. But on the other hand, you have to know that the idea of and the wish for democracy is something very high in the total Indian subcontinent. So the subcontinent, India is the largest democracy, and it's with black side and sometimes wonderful things. I remember when I was a child, the personality, for instance, of Pandit Nehru, who was a wonderful guy, who really made the effort to build Chandigarh. But democracy is something in a country that was, and in a history that was so divided by local rulers and kind of the class society. You must understand that the idea of democracy, and that everybody, also the people on the lowest thing, can vote. For that is a kind of much, we don't see that, but that is such an important thing for a society which is so divided that somebody with no money at all can bring out his voice, and it's so important to the people. I didn't talk too much, of course, to people in Bangladesh, but the stories that Siaf told me, nobody sees this building as a power building or as something. They are very proud on this building, and it's also this drawing of Louis Kahn that already started. It started very early when he got a commission immediately to make drawings on his very own particular way, and what you can already see in this very early one already kind of V-shaped, and then a few buildings, and also something which is also very particular. In this case, if you saw the mother house, Dominican mother's house, you had this very free composition. The way he distributed buildings for the whole side of Bangladesh is more it stayed more in a sort of symmetrical way, but the dynamics in this drawings is the turning of volumes to each other, which is very interesting to see how he turns this, how again this V is his arms already the idea of water. Water is also, on one hand, necessary to have a lot of, you need, it's a very wet country, but on the other hand, you need to use water because it can be very dry if you're away from the river, hot and dry, and water. That was the same idea for the enormous water area in the capital of Brazil, that also this Niemeyer and Costa, they also said we need a lot of water to make a place alive, and that's also already in these drawings. If you look at this drawing, you don't see the final plan. It's really, it was a repeating of things, but how he connects spaces with angles, for instance, and how he makes this connects and this in between spaces, and all this will stay in the building, although the plan will have an enormous evolution, coming from a kind of pyramidical form to more a kind of position of block-like identities connect to each other. This is already more what finally happened with the parliament, and these buildings, they are in the final solution also there, and they are. There was a huge need of hotels and places where all these parliament people could stay, because they had to come from very far away at the initial idea from West Pakistan, and so they needed to stay there for longer periods. It's also a kind of community of parliament people. That's a little bit the strange thing also, that they are there on this land and actually are not connected in a way to the city. There's something when you visit this site that is something that is strange. There is absolutely nearly no relation of this whole complex with the inner city of Bangladesh. You arrive there with a taxi. Actually, you come from there and you arrive under this thing here. You will see it immediately. But another way of working of Kahn is this extremely beautiful models that are made in his office. And they are amazing. And also the photography of the models is always with a very heavy grain. That's the way Kahn wanted this. These models are made in plaster, partly. You can see that they are really nearly sculptured, these models. And then there are these pictures with a heavy grain, because it shows beautifully shadow and light and all everything which is in between shadow and light. Sometimes that was very important for Kahn to do it that way. Very often we make a model and we set a lamp on it and it's dark and light. No, Kahn was very interested in all these levels of darker and lighter, and that's why it was also a great way of developing projects. There were made models all the time, but in this way. Also, kind of early structural fabrics of. And that's how you already can see how the Parliament building is composed by kind of prismatic identities that are interconnected. That's this is also things that they did and I have to. It's maybe easy to explain it here. You can see it in this upper model here. The way he catches light by openings in the walls, and they bring light down. That's something he does in this building, also in other buildings, but in this building particularly, this prismatic identities, which are actually also light towers that bring light down to the ground floor or in the floors in between in this building. This is more or less the final plan on some details. Of course, in the center you have the Senate, the Parliament, surrounded by offices and meeting rooms. But also very particular is the mosque, the praying hall here. You know, Bangladesh is an Islamic state, not Islamic thing. You know, the Islam is the religion in Bangladesh, but it's not. But still, in the parliament, there's a praying hall, and it's this building. And actually, it's quite prominent because it's the main entrance is this way, but there is a smaller entrance. I have to explain it later this way. All these inner spaces here are quite amazing, quite full of staircases and things. It's an enormous play of spaces. You can't even understand all, but it's like you're looking, you don't know where to look when you're in this area around the parliament. Something I have to tell you, you're not allowed to take pictures in the building. You're traveling a few thousand kilometers, and I say no pictures. Only one person in the group is allowed to take pictures, and that's why it was Christine. Yeah, you will see her pictures mainly, and the other books are pictures taken out of the book. Voilà. An amazing section of this building. For instance, this part is the praying hall. At the other hand, there is the area of the president of Bangladesh, and then it's surrounding by meeting room. But there's this in-between spaces here, which are so amazing, and I will show some pictures of these areas here. This enormous crown on top of the building, which is also if you analyze this thing here, on the one hand, it's the way light, as I explained, is brought into this enormous space of the parliament, but it's also a big span that holds an enormous, beautiful and refined cupola above the hall. You will see it immediately. It's of a delicate element in the building. It's we are talking about the lotus flower, but I don't believe it. It's really, it's so thin and it's hanging on a big span that is here, and it's in concrete. And you see this, this very specific way of perforate walls by Louis Kahn. Some people only know the guy with the holes, but they're all very well taught, and I try to show this. that's the way you arrive in this part. I show this. There's an enormous platform above you, but this is the road that leads to the parliament. So you're entering in a kind of underground area with arches, with very particular light that is entering. And of course you have enormously a lot of policemen and a lot of security and so on, and nearly no people, as I already told here. You have this cassette plafond, this brick span arches, and then the platform of cassette plafonds above it. And above this area is just a square, a ceremonial square that we will see later. This is above this area. There's this a ceremonial square, and in the background in our back we have the Parliament building. That's how you discovered this area. You see fragments of the Parliament through the arches and the water, and then two connecting bridges to the building itself. So you have on one hand in the back this platform building with these underground arches, and then you're confronted with the building, and the highest bridge is leading to the prayer hall. And this building. It's a square with 4 drums on the corner. And then actually there are 2 other ways to get in the building, but the most prominent is this way. It's a very particular way how these bridges are related to each other. But you have this enormous structure, organized structure, but you go like in a side way into the building, which is I'm sure thought about Kahn, that he wanted to do it this way. This leads to the hall, and you go there to pray. That is more a service, but as a visitor, you go in a kind of moving way into this building. It reminds me again to the way Greeks brought you to a building. For instance, to the Acropolis, you go in a zigzag way. To these fantastic roads to the Acropolis by Dimitri Pikionis, but they were the old way to go there. But Kahn brings you to this very organized structure in a kind of side way. It's quite thing. All these people knew each other very well. The very monumental and Kahn, and then this wonderful guy, Robert Ventura, who builds his mother's house also in the 60s. But what he does also, you go to a symmetrical building, but the door is on the side there. There's something similar in this thought. What is also, of course, very I'm going to speed on. I think I'm going. I'll speed on a little bit. But what, of course, is very particular is the way the walls are built. In pouring. You have this concrete walls, but the pouring phases are all let in with marble bands, and so each time they continue, they had a join with marble, that this enormous rough material with this enormous refined material of Makrana marble. You have a lot of marble actually in the area. Arches and perforations, and then these openings, this cutouts in the facades of the building, which are extremely sharp. The triangle, the circle, and the rectangle, and then you see in the second thing all the windows are behind. Of course, it's you need shadow, you need, but it's also, it brings this fantastic clair-obscur, particular clair-obscur image of a building, the light part and the dark part, and it's such an amazing part of, and also this narrowness, and then between this separate volumetrics that are grouped together, but then there are the light goes really through, and I want to tell something later about it. But yeah, it's this play in between these cutouts and the whole refined grid of lines is becoming a very complex. That goes also inside the building, is becoming a very complex thing. The bridges again. One could think about a fortress and a moat around the fortress. It's very hard to see the building like that when you're there, to see it in a complete, you're immediately quite close to it, and you're not allowed to walk on the field or to take some distance. That's why I took this image, but it's also this grayishness photography. But inside, you're really coming into the spaces around the parliament, around the Senate itself. It's a real Piranesian situation where you're in with staircases and even deeper staircases. But what is amazing is that this grid of lines continues inside the building as a kind of regulator, as a kind of three-dimensional grid and regulator of ratios, and then this cutout, this amazing cutouts, but the lines, they continue to be on the staircases, and that brings everything again together, and it's an enormous play. Then in the hall, you have to take you're only allowed to be 5 minutes in the hall. It's hard to, but then you see the cupola above the hall. I show you immediately the second image to show the relation of these two things to this wonderful cupola with this enormous fine connection to the walls, but actually it's concrete that is hanging, but in enormous beams above this tent-like concrete structures, concrete, and it's even more refined with the nervure, the lines on this thing. It's really amazing to see that, and again, you know, this light wells. You never see the light directly outside, but it's all kind of light wells. The light is taken into this prismatic volumes and is brought in a second way into the space. It's something, you know. I don't think that I don't read so much the texts of Kahn. It's too much about silence and light, silence and light. It's too very difficult to after a few things. But you know, I don't know if Kahn was interested in Baroque architecture, but of course this light taking, if you Guarini, for instance, or Bernardo Vittoni, the Piemontese architects, but also in the late Rococo architecture in southern Germany and so on. It's also a way of taking the light and then secondly bring it into the space. And of course, the very particular quality of light. And you know, I myself, I'm a really believer that light is dust, that it's really dust, that there are particles of dust coming into spaces. Like in, I don't know the Zandloop, but you know, the sand thing, like it comes through and then it spreads. And I'm absolutely a believer that light is dust. You know, you have two theories. You have the wave theory, but as an architect, you can't do very much with these waves. But you know, when you're creating spaces, you can do something with the idea of dust. And if you believe that light is dust, you can make openings or openings or openings or openings, and you can really think about how light comes into spaces. Big glass walls, that's, but you know, also smaller, and there's, you know, and you can see it if you look at the seal of a window, that there's a kind of intensity on frames, and that there's kind of speed when you push the dust through a hole. There's a kind of speed, and then there's, you can see it even if you look at the window. And I really believe that. And when we create spaces, we have this in mind, but you can see it, for instance, here, but the whole building is full of this, you know, look at these openings here. And also when this dust comes into the space, of course, it divides and it goes lighter and it opens, but of course you have this intensity here. And yeah. All right, this is all the spaces around the core of the parliament. You could look for it for spaces, and also the way he divides this windows makes me sometimes thinking about, you know, play field of checkboard or something, but you see always on the streets in India, people playing with blocks and things, plays that I don't understand, but you could think about this. You see here the way, here and then these marble pieces are felt out of the walls down, but okay. It's, there's always something in the Kahn buildings is in between a building and a ruin, actually. This is the praying hall where I was talking about. It was Christine de Bosre who did do all these pictures here. This was the group, but this, you know, you had these four corners that bring in the light, but again, and then he cuts off corners like this, but it's hollow behind. It's not that the roof is, but it's hollow to make a kind of, you know, to surround the space actually. We're going out again.
Is prima, Paul. This is helemaal prima.
No, but no, we're going out of the building again. It's just this place, and then you see an enormous field behind. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture, but there's a field, and then you see this water and these brick buildings, the V-shaped organized brick buildings. You can't go there. You're not allowed to go there. because they are the private apartments of the parliament people. But it's an enormous, interesting thing. There's brick buildings and then the concrete core in the center of this hall. Oops. Yeah, I wanted to show this. You can see also the way, you see already the drawings, but and also the particular green. This is the exact same building with this green, and this is when we were there. It was always also on the drawings of Kahn. There's a particular way he brings nature to his building. Sometimes with really open fields, but sometimes very close by clumps of trees which are very nearby the buildings. Sometimes he really prefers the total emptiness and a hard field, and then tuck the trees. That makes them. It's not like green everywhere, but yeah. Also, there's enormous walls of brick, and you can see the different moments that they were the masonry, which is sometimes and you saw the huge factories on the banks of the rivers. Sometimes that you can see it stops, and then another color. They continue this monumental walls and brick. Yeah. Well, but then I'm finishing actually the building, but then I want to talk what happened with me and Kahn a little bit. You see the connection with the city, but you know, a real connection, there's a distance, and even, you know, you're not going to cross this border here like that. You cannot walk around the building, for instance, there's so much security, and that's actually the same in Chandigarh. But I wanted to show this image of the building under construction, because there's something always happening with Kahn and the idea of the ruin, the idea of, you know, also these empty cutout halls in his building, and you're always in between. Is it built up or is it put down? Now I had myself a similar experience in our project we did for this Mies van der Rohe model. We made 1:1 scale model, and we made in Krefeld the golf club house of Mies. Also this feeling of, we did not completely build the whole building of money reasons, but also was not really necessary. As soon as the Mies space was there, was okay for us. But also this in-between situation of a building under construction or under demolishment. I have always looked also at also as a child to building under construction. It's always quite amazing, even if it's a completely uninteresting building. This empty structures of buildings, and of course we have this. But what I have to say, that the people of Bangladesh, they really care for their building. They really love it. That's what Saif told me also. It's distant, they cannot go there, but in a way there's a kind of symbolic in the building that they really see it as the heart of their country, in a way, that it's possible for them to make something that people recognize as this is the really the heart of our country, and the Sher Bangla Nagar is like that in Chandigarh. So I was asking myself how much calm is in this. This is some drawings we did for a book which called Correo, which was a text of Wim Kuijvers and drawings that I did, but where also there's this idea of the confrontation of volumes. In our case, we are fascinated by 3, 5, and 7, and also the volumetrics that can come out of this. And it's all like, you know, it's a bit playing around with that, but how much could there be, if you look back, how much could there be calm in our blood, actually? And I think there's still a little bit of calm still now in it, the way we like I forgot the name of the building of Kahn, the laboratory building of Kahn in San Diego.
Salk Institute.
La Jolla building.
The Salk Institute.
The Salk Institute, yes. We were not conscious when we were designing this pavilions, but a few years later, you asked by yourself, was I not a little bit, when we designed this building, the idea of the trains, you know, because it was just after the Wende in Germany, just after the Wende that we designed this building. And, you know, in this period, there were a lot of people traveling in trains from the DDR to Czechia to get out of the country. And also these images of trains in Germany and the whole history of Germany played in our head much more than Kahn. But still, when you look after this parallel volumetrics, was wondering if we were, was not a bit with the Salk Institute in my head. I've seen the building. I've seen all the famous building of Kahn, actually. I went to Bangladesh even, but one building I still have to do, and I will give it as a birthday present. Oh shit! I forget the museum building with also shell like
Kimball. You mean Kimball?
Kimball Art. Yeah, it's getting older. It's really, I need some magnesium pills, but also the market hall. I cannot say immediately that. Yeah, there is a calm background, but you know, nearly touching with your building another building is a calm gesture. I'm sure about this. This is the model of the Brusque building. There are 2 volumetrics, like pyramidal volumetrics combined. I always love the kind of monumentality, actually, and that's certainly in this project also going on. This building will be hopefully built in the coming period. I think we will have to study for the rest of the year on it, and then maybe next year, not in spring, but even in autumn, we start the building. The whole building is covered by green glass panels that are like tiles on the building, with 2 huge Northlight. That was this idea of one huge window which bringing light into the space, one window that can be treated. Again, you know, what a gesture I do myself very often is confronting models of different scales with each other. It's the same building there and there, and playing with models like playing with volumes and things like that. This is a building which is nearly finished in Antwerp, the ZNA hospital in Antwerp, and this cross ceiling, maybe the Richard Medical thing there, building with big, but there are this kind of ways he takes the floors there, maybe with Kahn and so, and also the static and the dynamic in one space also, which is something that sometimes is something in our mind. And then I'm finishing. Due to Kahn, I'm fine. I've seen in the world what I want to see. It's true, I'm fine, but I haven't been in Egypt. And that's now, I really want to go to Egypt. And this is one page of the famous Description de l'Égypte, the famous book made by the scientist Napoleon has sent it to Egypt, and it's such an amazing book. I have it. Of course, it's not it's a copy, but you know the engravings, the way shadow and light is shown on these extremely monumental buildings. Is shown is really, it's for me a true lesson in architecture. And you have here the Gizeh pyramids, and they seem to also to Louis Kahn something really. These are very early drawings of Kahn in the early 50s. He went to Egypt, and I want to go there also. I'm really preparing. It's of course our circumstances at the moment are very, very, very difficult, but it's on my schedule now, and I want to go there. So this is my talk.
Thank you, Paul. Wonderful. I think once you've been to Egypt, we need to re-invite you to talk about your travel experience.
Okay, I will.
Let's make a deal that we do
That's good. That's good. Then I make my impression of the pyramids, but also well, Karnak and all the stuff. I really want to go. It's really something.
Okay, we have room for questions. Paul, would you mind stop sharing your screen so that we can? I can. I'll do it. It's fine. Yeah, I've done it already. Okay. So then we see the participants. We have room for questions, so I kindly invite the audience to ask a question. You can do it in Dutch if you like. To ask Paul about his, I think, wonderful reading of the building by Kahn, but just also by Kahn in general. Please, the floor is to the audience. Yuan? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm struck, Paul, what you said about the public nature of the building. So the building not being accessible, and yet it's being celebrated and embraced by the local population. I mean,
Yes.
if you look at this video that Nathaniel Kahn did, there's also a very famous scene in that video.
Very touching.
Yeah, where he talks about what the cleaners talk about you're the son of and so forth. But I wasn't aware that it was that inaccessible.
Yeah, you can't go there. You can't go there. And I was also a bit, you imagine people also, they are also always colorfully, beautifully dressed and walking on the staircases, and nobody no, only security people and things. I was a bit, yeah, how can I say, yeah, it didn't give me a really good feeling. And
do you know if that has been different?
I didn't know that it was like this.
But do you know, I mean, from people you've talked to, was that different in the early days?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think, but you know, I told you about the very tensed and you know their situation even now, and their security, everything. Also in India, they are really afraid. And if you see the list of killed politicians, but it's not only that. And on the other hand, they are very proud. That's what Saif, because Saif is somebody very close to the people. You see the building he made there. It's he made it for you can find some talks about it on YouTube of this wonderful bamboo building he did. Somebody very close to the name to people. He said they are proud of it. It's also on the paper money, but that doesn't mean anything. But they are, yeah, it's their cathedral. It's their cathedral, but they can't go in, and that's a pity. It gives not. Also, you know, the building I think is too big. You know, this brick buildings, they were for all the parliamentarians that had to come from Pakistan to be there for 2 months, 3 months. I don't know if they use this, and you're not allowed to go there either. You cannot go in those brick buildings. There are private areas of people, but that's strange. But on the other hand, of course, I didn't walk into the street and ask the people, do you like your parliament building? No, but because if you traveled in India and you see that were funny people that I showed, but if you see the poverty of the thing, it's unbelievable. It's double of India. It's so shocking, actually. And then you ask this question, but it's also in the movie. Building such a building in the poorest country of the world. The answer of Saif, and that's probably the only person I really talked about it, says the people love the building. They needed this building, and they needed also this feeling of democracy. I try to explain because it's still there, the lowest, the middle, and the highest classes, and for them, democracy gives them something to believe in, actually. Yeah, and when you see, it's the same in India, the same in Pakistan, but they have all chosen against these former rulers, and they have really, these countries have chosen for democracy. For them, it's something very precious. But still, there's corruption in some kinds. There's also families that follow the one after the other one on the top level. That's also existing. Also in Pakistan, it's democracy, but it's complex. It's not easy. And now, it's hard to see how the situation in India is. If the enormous ravages of COVID now over there, I can imagine that Pakistan, where everybody lives on 50 centimeter, Bangladesh, the streets are full of people. It must be very difficult at the moment over there.
Okay, is there another question?
Sorry.
Welkom.
Ja, goedenavond allemaal. The way he takes. I have not seen the building by myself, but I can make a comparison with Ronchamp Chapel of Le Corbusier. The way he takes the light,
Yeah.
and he orientates the towers to different.
The gap light, and they bring it down. Yeah. That's certainly a similar way of bringing in the light, so, and then let it down. But that also is a proof of my belief that light is something you can, and it's not with wave you cannot do very much, and you're thinking about spaces and light, but with this idea of taking the light and bringing it down. But there's certainly something happening similar with the three towers around the chapel in Ronchamp.
I think our colleague Dirk also had a question. Thank you for your question.
Hey, dag Paul, dank je voor de lezing. Dat is fantastisch. Ja, ik heb ook niet het plezier gehad om Dhaka te bezoeken. Wel Ahmedabad, wat mij ook enorm, enorm indruk gegeven heeft. Maar ja, ik heb niet echt een vraag, maar ik was getroffen door het feit dat je in je verhaal over Kahn begint met die fantastische foto van Rossi met zijn sigaret tussen de zuilen van het park. Ik vind het altijd een fantastische foto gevonden.
In alle bescheidenheid, ik kan mij in zijn plaats stellen. Ik heb trouwens een foto van mezelf ook gerelateerd tot de kolom. Ja, dat is waar. Dus,
maar het deed mij denken...
Ja.
Maar het deed me denken, het is geen vraag, het is gewoon iets omdat ik er moest aan denken. Dat eigenlijk in een relatief vroege tekst van Tafuri, op een heel verrassende manier, dat hij Rossi introduceert vlak na Kahn. Dus in Architectura Contemporanea. En als ik me goed herinner, dan zegt hij iets van dat ze iets gemeen hebben, Rossi, enfin, niet iets gemeen hebben, dat Rossi iets gemeen heeft met Kahn. En dat is het insisteren op het geven van een concrete vorm aan nostalgie. En hij is natuurlijk op dat moment, dat is de Rossi van San Cataldo en dat soort van hele sterke periode van Rossi. En ik moest eraan denken omdat ineens Rossi daar opduikt aan die link die daar gelegd werd door Tafuri.
Absoluut. Ja, er is zeker iets, ja, zo de memoria, de herinnering ook. De herinnering aan van de laatste ding, maar de herinnering. Maar ik heb ook een heel mooie tekst, maar dan over literatuur gelezen van George Steiner, die mij daar ook doet aan denken. Ik vond dat zo'n mooie uitleiding van Steiner. Hij veralgemeent dat tot kunstwerken. En Steiner is een cultuurpessimist, maar schrijft op de meest wonderlijke manier over kunst. En hij zegt dat in elk kunstwerk de ruis van duizenden jaren aanwezig is. Ook het meest extreem avant-garde kunstenaar heeft die ruis van duizenden jaren in zich. Ik vond het zo'n mooie uitlating. En als je naar avant-garde, bepaalde avant-garde, dat is ook werkelijk zo. Die echt ertoe doet, de grote boegbeelden, ja, als je we hebben momenteel niet zo'n maar zelfs als je nu een Bruce Nauman of zo, dat is ook al een oude man natuurlijk, ja, dat zit nog altijd die ruis van het lichaam bijvoorbeeld, zoals En ik vond daar ook iets, ik vond mij daar in thuiskomen. En als ik die Kahn dan ontdekte in de jaren 70 en daarom bijvoorbeeld heeft zoiets als rem cola's mij niet zoveel gedaan. Laten we zeggen dat cola's iets later in de jaren 70 dan in één keer naar voren treedt. En weet je wat voor een soort reactie? Maar dat ken ik al. Hè. Dat heb ik al gezien in de Expo van achter. Zo reageerde ik toen, echt waar. I know it. En ik heb uiteraard naderhand ook wel een bepaalde interesse in dingen, maar dat heeft niet die verrassing aan mij gebracht in de jaren 70 en uw prille ontwikkeling als architect, dan ja, die Kahn die daar te meer daar werd geen woord over gesproken, dat was echt rampzalig, maar dat je dat dan ja, ziet, dat zo iemand ongegeneerd appelleerde aan die hele grote, doorheen de geschiedenis kijkende blik op beschaving, op cultuur enzovoort. Ik voelde mij daar meer op mijn plaats mee, moet ik zeggen. Ja, dat is toch een stukje gebleven. Een mooi tegengif, was ik had er net ook verteld, was toch mijn contact met laten we zeggen, de avant-garde. Maar je moet ook weten, ik spreek dan over figuren als Jan Verkruijs, Thomas Schutte, en dat contact. En eigenlijk, als je het goed bekijkt, in werk zit daar ook die memoria en wat door andere nostalgie, wat je daarnet vernoemde, maar dat zit daar eigenlijk ook in. De radicale avant-garde was eigenlijk gepasseerd. En zij waren al... Het zat wel in the back of their minds. Maar er zat ook die memoria en die wat nostalgie genoemd wordt, zat daar eigenlijk toch wel in dat werk van Jan Verkruijs ook wel, vind ik.
En Munoz, hè, Paul?
Munoz ook, hè. Munoz ook. Ja, Munoz was daar, Verkruijs. Frans Mest is een beetje een ander figuur, vind ik. Die lied, ja, het is waar ik een enorme appreciatie voor heb, maar ja, dat zat... Daar zit zoiets Middel-Europees in, hè? Frans West en voeten vegen aan alles. In een zeer burgerlijke omgeving, uw voeten letterlijk aan alles vegen.
Ja, Wenen.
Wenen,
Wenen,
ja.
dus, ja.
Ja, wel, maar het is jammer, de beleving, maar ik weet niet hoe dat... Ja, ik heb onder andere jouw tentoonstelling van die hoeken enorm, en ik heb daar een paar dingen gezien die mij enorm fascineerden. Maar in mijn situatie is het een beetje ongelukkig geworden dat ik daar niet die rechtstreekse band mee heb met kunstenaars. Dat is zo wat
Momenteel
teloor gegaan. Ja, ik ben even geïnteresseerd, maar we zijn gewoon veel te hard aan het werken. We hebben geen tijd gewoon voor... En ik ken ook de plekken niet waar je dat dagelijks zou kunnen beleven. Dat is een zeker gemis bij mij.
Zullen we kijken of er nog een volgende vraag is?
Ja.
Heeft nog iemand een vraag om te stellen?
Ik heb eerst een opmerking, Paul, omdat je bent gefascineerd door de description de l'Egypte. Dus ik denk dat we jou naar de bibliotheek moeten brengen. Is het niet? Want wij hebben de originele van.
Ik weet het.
Dus, dat is fantastisch om dat echt...
Hij zit bij jullie zeker, hè?
Ja, dat is echt fantastisch om...
Ja, want ik had dan zo'n spelletje. En ik heb daar een bladzijde uit de description de l'Egypte gekozen en ze hebben het bij jullie gevonden. Weet ik zo dat wel eens blad voor blad, want dat formaat is anders. Hè.
Ja.
Ja, ik ga dat toch een keer de tijd voor maken. Als dat,
dat was een van de hoogtepunten in mijn opleiding. Op het moment dat iemand mij dat boek voor mijn neus heeft gelegd.
Ja, maar ik denk alle jonge studenten daar zo naar moeten kijken, want de essentie van wat een muur is, wat het een opening in een muur is, dat is, ik vind dat een van de meest fascinerende leerboeken. En het komt ook door de enorme geraffineerde gravures die daarin staan, die tekenwijzen. En dat is ja.
Ik had nog een vraag over de tekeningen van Kahn. Want wat me eigenlijk heel erg boeit, is het feit dat die tekeningen, je hebt die maquettes genomen, die tekeningen zijn zeer vlak. Dus het is iemand die in een soort heel geometrische vlakke figuren tekent.
Ja, ik kon een indeling gemaakt en zo.
En dan,
zeer zelden ik doe dat wel, soms nu en dan een keer zoiets in perspectief tekenen. Ik doe dat wel. Maar gelijk dat 90% van zijn tekeningen bovenaanzichten zijn of frontale aanzichten. Maar ik moet eerlijk zeggen...
Hoe verklaar je dan die ruimtelijkheid?
Ja, maar ik moet bij mezelf ook zeggen, ik heb niets aan 3D-toestanden. Ik haat dat. Ik vraag aan mijn medewerkers, ik wil gewone, eenvoudige aanzichten om verhoudingen te zien. En die 3D's, die verknoeien het allemaal. Hè. En wij moeten die maken om nogal onze boterham te verdienen. Maar dat is tegen ons goesting. Maar zo die simpele aanzichten om een verhouding, een hoogte. En ja, het is in uw hoofd, hè, die dieptes en weet ik wat. En ja, dat heb je in je hoofd. Hè. En zo, de schetsen die ik zelf maak, moet ik zeggen, is ook, als ik eens een 3D-tekening, zo in 3 dimensies, is het eigenlijk om het uit te leggen aan iemand, maar niet om het zelf te onderzoeken. Het zijn echt, zowel in plattegronden als in opstanden, ook het fenomeen van de doorsnede, dat was iets fundamenteels voor mij. Hè. Maar natuurlijk, er is een nieuwe generatie die met die 3D, die alles onmiddellijk in 3D zet. En daarmee opgevoed is. En ik kan me best voorstellen dat je er iets mee kunt. Maar ik ben er te oud voor gewoon. Ik werk nog doodgraag op kalkpapier. Dus dingen die ik door elkaar teken, die lagen nog enzovoort. Ik ben hier de enige die nog rollen kalkpapier vraagt. René kan het getuigen. Je ziet ook bij Kahn soms een keer plakwerk, collages. In sommige van zijn tekeningen dat hij dingen uitgeknipt heeft en ten opzichte van elkaar gepositioneerd heeft. Blijkbaar, en hij tekent met zo'n dikke houtskooldingen ook, dat hij dat doet. En nooit vrij juist, dat doet hij niet. Als je zo ziet, ja, het zijn toch redelijk ruige schetsen. Hij moet dus mensen gehad hebben die dat onmiddellijk in een soort schaaltekening omzetten. Ik weet het niet, maar ik heb niet de indruk dat hij dat zelf deed. Dat dan onmiddellijk zijn medewerkers zijn die dat op die manier deden. Maar hoe dan ook, van in het begin was dat hoogst origineel. Hè. Maar hij heeft een lange weg moeten doen, hè, voordat hij er was. Kahn heeft heel lang zo'n soort housing gedaan, en zeer goed, maar eer dat hij die fundamentele taal, wat hij was in de 60, denk ik, of zo, of eind 50. Hij heeft dat niet onmiddellijk zo gedaan. Zijn vroegste is daar een Yale, dat ding. Maar eigenlijk, dat is zeer mooi, hè? Dat is super mooi. Maar dat is niet, zoiets heb ik nog nooit in mijn leven gezien. Weliswaar dat plafond. En daar toont hij ook onder andere zijn interesse in kristalstructuren en zo in dat plafond. Maar voor de rest, bon, het is een prachtig gebouw. Het staat er ook fantastisch in de Chapel Street, waar dat dan ook zijn latere Museum of British Art gebouwd is. Maar de shock is misschien Kimball daarachter. Ik weet het niet helemaal in het rijtje, maar...
Kimball is ook redelijk laat. Kimball is ook
is laat,
aan het einde van zijn leven, ja.
Ja, ik vraag me af wat er daarachter juist gekomen is. Misschien Exeter, of misschien, ik weet het niet. Daar zijn al die gaten in en zo. Ook een mooi gebouw, ook de bibliotheek. En vooral het idee dat de mensen niet moeten in het centrum zitten, maar naar buiten kijken terwijl ze boeken lezen en dan die centrale hal. Dat is niet toevallig iets waar dat wij toch ook nu... Dus dat zou wel een beetje Kahn misschien, of wij hebben die archieven in Bordeaux gebouwd, niet Kahn, zomaar het idee van dat je zo'n ruimte boven u nodig hebt om je daar te concentreren. Zo. En dat is zeer aanwezig in die leeszaal in Bordeaux. Die is 25 meter hoog, nee, 20 meter hoog. En dat is een vrij nauw. En toch heb ik het gevoel dat dat echt zo, ja, dat je zoveel dingen nodig hebt. En dan de leeszaal van het Rijksarchief, vlak bij jullie daar. Dat zijn meer zo hallo's boven uw hoofd, wat toch ook wel, ja, dat licht dat langs daar moet komen.
Ik moest spontaan denken aan het raam in de concertzaal. Boven het ene raam.
Ja, de ene blik zo, ja, dat oog. Ja, dat heeft ook wel een beetje te maken met het rozas van de kathedraal. Zo. Ik ben een veel liefhebber van... ik moet daar nu en dan naartoe, naar Gotische kathedraal. Weet je maar waarom? Ik had een discussie, ik weet niet als jullie... Björn Schmelzer, zeg je dat is? Rij de la Voix.
Ja, ja.
Ik heb dan al veel... Ik heb in zijn film gespeeld over laatst. En we hadden het heel uitvoerig over gotiek. En hij gelooft dat de gotiek, en hij meent dat dat ook in die muziek aanwezig is, maar hij is een enorme kenner ook van gotische kathedralen. En hij meent dat het bouwen van de ruïne inherent is aan de gotiek. Niet aan de Romaanse bouwkunst, maar aan de gotiek. Nauwelijks 1 kathedraal is afgeraakt, geen enkele, behalve de Dom van Keulen was tot in de 19e eeuw gebouwd hebben. Maar dat ze de mentale ingesteldheid als een ruïne aan het bouwen waren. Hij beweert dat in de gotiek... dat zij er echt van overtuigd waren, we gaan dat nooit afkrijgen. Maar dat het ook nooit de bedoeling geweest is om dat af te krijgen. Dat de bedoeling was om... En dat is een groot verschil, want de Romaanse bouwkunst is er zeer dikwijls in geslaagd om het ding volledig af te krijgen. Je kunt dat ook, zo'n tonnenwerf niet half bouwen, maar... inderdaad, die gotiek met die halve torens, zelfs de grootste, zelfs de Notre-Dame, die torens, en Chartres, 2 verschillende torens. Ja, hij beweert dat daar fundamenteel in aanwezig was om de ruïne te bouwen, eigenlijk. Ja.
Ja, ja. Op het eerste zicht lijkt het mij een heel 19e of laat 18e, vroeg 19e eeuwse visie op de gotiek.
Ja.
Van die namisgenis. Want sommige van die kathedralen zijn natuurlijk bepaalde fases zijn onwaarschijnlijk snel gebouwd.
Ja, dingen.
Ja, 25 jaar en dat
Ja,
ding staat, maar
ja.
dan stopt het om
Ja, maar er zijn
allerlei
er ook gelijk bijvoorbeeld ook Lan. Lan is eigenlijk...
Daar staan veel torens
Dat
op.
is af, hè. Lan, dat is
Ja.
af, hè. Het is niet altijd waar ook, maar ja.
Maar Lan heeft dan wel, want daar moest ik wel aan denken, die hele transparantie van die torens, ja, dat is bijna een ruïne natuurlijk. Dat is zo
Ja, dat ook,
open en
ja,
transparant,
inderdaad.
dus daar is
Dat er
het.
kunt doorkijken, inderdaad. Inderdaad. Dat is trouwens mijn lievelingskathedraal, Lan. En dat is... je kan de zondag om 11 uur vertrekken en dan naartoe rijden en dan iets eten in een simpele brasserie. En dan dezelfde dag terugkomen. En als je goesting hebt, kun je het weer keren langs Giezen, langs de
De familie.
Dat ligt zeer close. Ja, dit is zo'n trip dat ik om de 2 jaar toch eens doe. En heel veel. Ik heb redelijk veel schetsboekjes van gotische kathedralen. Ja.
Ik denk dat we daar ooit nog eens iets mee moeten doen met die schetsboekjes, Paul.
Ja.
Ik denk, het is stilaan ondertussen 10 uur geworden.
Beter.
Ik denk dat we deze discussie, of gesprek liever, graag nog verder voeren. Ik denk dat we hier nog een paar gelegenheden voor moeten creëren, Paul, dat we dit kunnen continueren. Ik wil je bedanken voor, ik denk, een grandioze afsluiter van deze lezingenreeks. Waar ik heel blij ben dat je toegezegd hebt om jouw fascinatie voor Louis Kahn en voor het parlementsgebouw in Bangladesh toe te lichten. Ik wil iedereen danken die er vanavond aanwezig was en die de voorbije lezingen allemaal heeft bijgewoond. Ik wens jullie allemaal nog een prettige avond. Blijf gezond en hopelijk zien we elkaar in levende lijven toch snel terug. Dank nogmaals, Paul, voor deze prachtige avond en we zien elkaar snel, hoop ik. Tot ziens, beste collega's, studenten. Houd jullie goed. Tot snel.